around, most women will have a 28-day cycle as an average, but obviously some can be shorter or longer depending on like basically your genetics, like your family, all of that sort of stuff, and then also like if you're under stress, and as well if you're on contraception. So they're all things to take in consideration while we're talking today as well. Basically your period obviously will start at a young age, and then it will go up until about when in your 50s, and then that's when you're starting to hit the menopause stage, okay? And yeah, basically the main role is obviously pregnancy. That is the idea of the menstrual cycle, so which we all know is what our bodies naturally do. So this is kind of like, I guess, like the phases of the menstrual cycle. So we would be starting in the follicular phase, which is where our period begins, and it's normally lasts for 1 to 7 days. Then you come into like your I guess like post-period phase, where you're coming into your ovulation fertile window. So this is actually like the really good time to like up your strength and stuff like that. You should actually be feeling quite good in these first 2 phases here, because I know that some periods can be quite rough, especially to begin with on those first couple of days, but you should actually be feeling pretty good overall in your training and everything like that. This is when we start to feel a bit shit, when we're coming after that, like ovulation. We're coming into our like PMS just before our period, so we're coming into that luteal phase, okay? So I guess talking about week 1, so of our period, obviously if you are on contraception, again, this is different. You won't have as highs and lows through your hormones, okay? So that's just something to be mindful of. Your like contraception kind of puts you on like a more of a plateau, whereas everyone who has a natural cycle, you'll actually notice the highs and lows through your hormones. So obviously most periods last from 2 to 7 days. During this time, obviously our estrogen increases in our body, which basically gives us those happy hormones, okay? This is the time where you can actually push your training intensity, and you can even push your endurance as well through that time. Obviously during day 1 to 2, you might feel like crap, you might feel crampy, you might be heavy, all of those things. So that is the time where you can actually still pull back a little bit. You might feel a little bit fatigued because our body is going through a process. But obviously definitely do your strength training through that time, and then also include foods higher in iron for recovery. So that will really benefit you through that time, because you guys might have those cravings and things like that as well. So thinking about what carbs you're having, protein and fats, okay? So they are definitely, nutrition is prioritized around that time. I know that we all like to have a snack on chocolate or even cookies, but just be mindful, obviously, while you're training, you want to prioritize your nutrition. So then we come into week 2, which is pre-ovulation. So this is when our estrogen has a positive effect on our mood, energy, and our strength. So this is the best time to actually push for those PBs in the gym. So you'll actually see that your RPE scale probably be a lot easier through your sessions, whereas compared to like the week before your period, where your RPE actually might increase from a weight that you've done already in the past, because you will be feeling that fatigue. Just basically continuing to push your training intensity, pushing your strength. Your body will actually be able to cope and recover quite easily through this time as well, which is amazing, because women's bodies are amazing. And then this is also a time that you can also increase your HIIT training, like your endurance, and great time to eat your carbs. So making sure that you're prioritizing your carbs before your workout and after as well with your protein. So then we come into week 3. So this is post-ovulation. So this is where our hormones start to dip. This is where you can potentially start to feel that little bit of like tiredness, fatigue, all of those things. So basically this is the time where we're going to be holding more fluid. We're going to be feeling a bit more bloated. So then this might change your RPE through your training again. So this might be those weeks where you come in and you're just like, oh, don't really want to be here, like kind of thing, but you're in here and you're doing the work anyways. So this is where obviously our progesterone surges and it decreases our serotonin, which obviously increases our cravings for our carbohydrates, okay? So that again is something to be mindful of. Obviously carbs increase our serotonin, so again, be mindful of your nutrition, be aware obviously through your time, and your core body temperature will actually increase, so that will disturb your recovery. So that's just something to be mindful of. If you've had a crappy sleep, there is reasons for it, okay? And you might feel a bit sorer after the gym than you normally would. This is where we're actually full on experiencing all the PMS symptoms. So we're feeling the like weight fluctuations, mood swings, tiredness, flare-ups with your acne, all of those sort of things. And potentially your cravings will increase. This is like the time that you'll honestly feel it. I know that I feel very, very fatigued coming into my period myself, and I'll be so snacky, like in crazy. So obviously this is time where you can actually look at reducing intensity if you need to, if you are not really recovering that well. And then prioritizing what feels best for you. So if you are feeling pretty good just before your period, then hell yes, just get in here and do the sesh. But just like come in and just be mindful of where you're at in your cycle, okay? Sometimes I'll talk to my girls and I'll say, where are you up in your cycle, if they're coming in and feeling like shit, and then they'll be like, oh, I'm actually a week before my period, and I'm like, well, there's your reason. That's your body's doing a thing. So yeah, just reducing or avoiding foods that do make you feel bloated. That is something to, again, be mindful of. And then just prioritizing good nutrition over that time, because obviously your carbs and your protein should help you feel satiated through that period, okay? Instead of those cravings, okay? Obviously, everyone should have chocolate if you want chocolate, or cookies, or whatever you want, 110%, but it's just more so the other things that can come with that is like, you know, eating blocks of chocolate every single day, that sort of thing. So just be mindful of that, and it probably won't make your sessions feel as good when you're just snacking and not eating pretty good foods, okay? And then we'll just touch on perimenopause and menopause. So this is when perimenopause is when you begin to start having irregular periods. That should happen around the age of 40. It will last up to 2 years until you're actually starting to hit into the menopause stage. It might even last a little bit longer or a little bit less. Everyone's different. And obviously, again, your parents and stuff like that could have had a different situation as well. So this is just when our estrogen begins to drop, and that's when the menopause symptoms start to begin, okay? Then when we hit menopause, which is around our age of 50, which is where we completely lose our period altogether, you'll just notice some changes in your body composition massively, especially because your estrogen levels will drop, which promote fat storage. So again, keeping up with your strength training and all of that, and like just coming in and just actually getting in the gym is the best thing for you through that time, because obviously our bone density and muscle and everything like that lower over that period. So you just need to be mindful of that. It's actually the best time to continue training. A lot of people pull back because they're like, oh, I'm getting older, I don't need to go to the gym, but it's actually better for you because you don't want to be like an older person with a walker. You know, you want to actually be able to do things. You want to be able to tie your own shoelaces and those sort of things. Like a lot of us have grown up in a very independent world, so we still want to continue those things at that older age as well. So basically, to help manage symptoms with those, things like obviously training is great, recovery and a healthy diet. So thinking about like maybe supplementing magnesium if you're having restless legs, those sort of things should really, really help through that period, okay? And that is all from me. So
and control. So those are frequency, volume and intensity. So frequency being the number of training days in a week, along with the amount of times that you execute a movement within that week. Volume is the amount of sets and reps that you perform, and then intensity is the weight that's on the bar for each given set. So the considerations that should be made when you're allocating for each of these variables include size and body weight, the amount of weight on the bar, their level of fitness, and lifestyle factors outside of the gym. So applying this to the female athlete would consider that women are typically smaller and lift a lesser amount of what we call absolute load on the bar. So compared to like a super heavyweight male, it's typically like a lesser amount of objective weight that's actually on the barbell. So this is beneficial for their ability to recover from session to session and week to week. So they can typically do more work because they get less fatigued from that. So as a result, they can handle more frequency, volume, and intensity in all of their training across the board. So typically that means for the female, they can handle upward of 4 days a week, with some cases being up to 6 days a week of training. And they can handle the high fatiguing movements like squats and deadlifts. They can handle the really highly fatiguing movements like squats and deadlifts more frequently. So they can deadlift like 2 times a week, squat 2 to 3 times, and they can train their upper body heaps and just bench pretty much every day. Yeah, which is a really good thing. And then their ability to handle more intensity will allow them to lift heavier weight based on their percentage of 1 rep max throughout the week. And their ability to handle more volume allows them to work in higher rep ranges, so from upward of 6 to even 15, and then complete more working sets as well, so you can actually get more work in. So there's been a couple of times there that I've gone on about the work capacity of females being greater because they can do more work, and that's really good. And basically what this does in what we call the phasic structure, it's kind of how the mesocycles break into parts and how you structure them over weeks or months. And then the results of them having a greater work capacity and a reduced rate of recovery allows them to delay their fatigue over that period of time. So basically they can handle more linear weeks of training than say like a male could. Due to this, you can extend their training blocks heaps and just basically like ramp and just keep going and increasing weight week to week to week for upwards of 2 months even sometimes. So Aiden's client Sammy runs an 8-week block where she just adds weight to the bar every single week. And for a lot of people, especially males, like we literally just can't do that. But yeah, then when considering the extension of a training block, especially to that extreme, it's like really important to understand like your goal as an athlete and whether you want to actually stick to the same monotonous thing for 2 months, like every single week, and then just selecting like exercises that are more enjoyable to you if that is the case. All right, so basically I've harped on about how you guys can handle like a greater workload and more intensity and more volume. But the thing to understand is that when you're starting out programming or executing a plan, not to smash yourself with high volume and intensity right away, because this can just lead to like a lot of disheartening like fatigue and stuff like that because you just ramp it up way too quickly. So starting with like the lowest effective dose and then just ramping up as you go is probably the best option for that. Okay, cool. And that's me done. Sweet. Does anyone have any questions around like training? No, is it good?
All right. So Paige was overrunning. She sent me a photo like, who did this? I actually wish I had more photos because that was the only funny photo I could find on your Facebook page. Oh. Like, and I was just like, what? Really funny photo. So you're yeah. All right. So I'm going to go through like I guess more of the training programs for females. So this is stuff that we talk about every week with Paige and obviously with Benny, with our female collective, like when we go to write a program for them, what are some of the things that we consider? And obviously like you guys are more like general population style clients. So A lot of this sort of stuff is going to be more generalized. So I think it's going to be really applicable for you. So the first thing to consider when we're creating a training program for a female is to understand exactly what the goal is. So creating a program that's specific towards the goal really matters. So are you after body composition goals? Are you aiming to be more fit? Are you aiming to build more strength in one or more lifts? Maybe you want to feel more athletic, or you have a sport that you're participating in which you wish to improve at. So understanding those goals as a trainer is really important, and communicating that with your coach is of utmost importance, because they can't write you something that they think is going to be achieving your goals. You've got to be transparent in that communication, okay? And then once the goals are addressed, you can trim down all the stuff that doesn't really matter around what makes a really good program, and you can actually specify exactly what goes into that program to achieve that goal, okay? So considering novelty is another big thing, okay? Because obviously you've got these big goals that you want to achieve, but sometimes the process to achieving those goals can be really boring. And at the end of the day, you want to enjoy your training. You want to be able to look forward to coming to the gym and doing a session. Like, for example, if Paige programmed, I don't know if you guys know what Grace is, as a CrossFit WOD every single workout, I'd imagine like half of you wouldn't even want to turn up. So adding in some bench by the sounds of it, or maybe some, I don't know, like maybe some like circuity style stuff that some of the girls may enjoy. Like, that's stuff that creates novelty in a program that just gets you into the door to actually participate in your sessions. So it should be shaped upon the previous slides being your goals, but at the end of the day, hints of novelty here and there can go a long way in a program, okay? Novelty allows the female to continue finding training enjoyable despite how monotonous their goals may be. And this could include variations, as I mentioned, circuits, cardio, other different exercises, learning a new skill like body weight exercises like pull-ups and dips, or even some like weightlifting, something that's completely like different contrast to what you're used to doing. But as I said before, communication is very important when constructing a training program. So understanding, I guess, what the goal is and what novelty you can create can really improve the adherence of your ability to attend all your training sessions. So understanding this scale here, so obviously specificity is going to really get you to achieve those larger goals, but obviously at the other end there's novelty. So where you lie along this scale really depends on how you communicate with your coach to understand what you want to try and achieve, okay? So communication is obviously key. So female specific exercises for strength-based training. So this is an assessment thing that we run here at HPC and Lifting a Smile, where a new girl walks in, for example, and we want to understand exactly where they've come from and what their experience is like. So getting a background check is the first thing we want to try and do. Understanding their injuries first and foremost, because we want to be able to work with allied health professionals to ensure that when we write a program, that it's not something that is just kind of whipped up. We want to consider obviously those rehabilitation protocols, but obviously like avoid any injuries that may happen that could arise. Understanding lifestyle, like I know there are some girls here that work 9 till 5 and other girls work from home and maybe in an office job, or maybe they're on their feet because they work a trade. But at the end of the day, understanding their lifestyle can really help the trainer or the coach write a program that doesn't, I guess, fatigue them too quickly or too much or not enough. And then expectations. So as a female, like your expectations may be just to come twice a week, 3 times a week, 4 times a week. Being able to understand, I guess, what your expectations are around attendance is something that should be really, I guess, communicated. So then we can keep you accountable in your sessions. I think half the reason a lot of people come here is because I'm in their phone, I'm in their inboxes asking, where are you? If you haven't turned up for a session. So being able to make sure your expectations are met, I guess, realistically is something that's really important. Once you've done, I guess, the background check, assessing the female's ability to move through different ranges of motion is probably the next thing. So actually getting them to maybe try and touch their toes while keeping their knees straight, or maybe seeing if they can actually get their arms overhead without any pain, or if they, I guess, compensating in some ranges of motion that may be, I guess, not true to what, I guess, a certain joint action can do on the human body. So assessing ranges, can they do a bodyweight squat? Can they then do a squat with a barbell on the back? From that point, you can create a regression progression model, which just simply means doing exercises that you can do first before you can do something else that you can't do right now. So I know, for example, Paige in her classes, she will run, for example, for a female who can't do a barbell squat, they may just do like a goblet squat to begin with. And then over time, once you learn those abilities on how to move better, you can then progress into what would be a normal barbell squat. So that's a really common strategy we see here, is that people come into the gym, they may start really far down, I guess, the regress side of things, and then they eventually get better and better and better, and they progress along the scale. And as I've harped on before about communication and education, it's the most important thing to understand where you're at. So you may walk into the gym with, I guess, the expectations that, oh, I should be able to bench and squat and deadlift straight away, but really it's just like getting your L's as a driver. You've got to get those hours up, and you've got to really try and make sure that you're lifting safely first before you can start loading up that bar or progressing to what is a technical exercise like a squat, bench, deadlift, or clean jerk, whatever it may be. So in regards to programming the female athlete, this is an anecdotal experience on my behalf. So I've programmed a ton of females in my time, but this is the stuff that I look for when I first get them on. So developing motor competency and control. So when females come into the gym, depending if what their background is, again, background checking, what their sporting history is like. I've coached girls who have a really athletic background. For example, if they've ran track before or they've played touch footy, they're going to be a lot more stiffer than, say, a female who comes to the gym who has a dancing or a ballet background or a background in something that considers to be more flimsy, gymnastics, for example. So understanding their sporting background really tells a lot about how good they are at controlling their body, okay? Especially through certain ranges of motions, because with barbell training, it's very forward and backwards. There's no rotation or side-to-side movements. So knowing exactly what they've done before can really give you a step ahead in knowing what goes into that program first, okay? So when we consider flimsy versus stiff, like I said, a really good example is like, for example, like you can't touch your toes without bending your knees. That would be considered someone really stiff. Or if you can just put your hands flat on the ground, bending right over it like 180 degrees, then obviously you're considered really flimsy. So understanding those sort of like assessments can really help write a program. The thing is that when we lift barbells and we lift dumbbells and we do exercising, we want to be stiff and we want to be rigid because that's what's going to allow us to put more force into the thing that we're trying to move, okay? So if you come to the gym, for example, as a gymnast or as a dancer, it's going to be really hard for you to lift, I guess, a deadlift or squat a barbell without actually falling apart because your body's used to move. But really, at the end of the day, we want to try and create relative stiffness so we can reduce the impact of what could create an injury. So what we're going to look at is probably doing some more direct lower back training. And females don't really train their lower backs because they think that they're training their glutes most of the time, and their glutes get really, really strong. But at the end of the day, the back is what holds you together. It's the force that produces through the legs, through your core, through the bar when you squat a barbell, or any sort of movement in that regard. So it's important to train your lower backs correctly. So I'm going to get Mr. Benny Roberts to show us a couple of examples of these exercises. One of his favorites, the glute bridges. So this is how we want to see most of you guys execute your glute bridges. So a glute bridge obviously is known for like just getting up and pushing your hips to the ceiling, but really we want to go the other way where we're actually pushing our belly to the ceiling. So you can see Benny here, he's literally shoving his bum this way, and then that's where he's pushing up into hip extension without losing that tuck out of his bum. He's going to really feel his lower back as opposed to his bum cheeks. And that's another good way to start your progressed model, all right? So this is regression, moving into progression like I was saying before. The next one is a lower back extension. You probably come over here, mate, if you want. Bring it over here. You should be able to lift it up. So a lower back extension is a great tool because when you use machines, you can literally just not think. You can just hop into it and just do it, okay? So that's the really good part about machines. And that's why I've got so many machines here, because it's a great start to your training program if you have a regressed model. But basically what we're looking for here is when we're doing the lower back extension, we want to really relax our glutes and we don't want to feel them at all. And you can see that Benny is really trying to, I guess, compress that lower back as he's extending himself to lockout. You'll notice as well that his knees are probably straight, hopefully. And that's going to allow him to directly train not only his lower back, but lengthen his hamstrings, which is going to strengthen that hip extensor eventually. So relaxing the glutes is a really big key because most of the time I see a lot of females come in and their glutes are really turned on. Okay, so a good cue would be to think about like spreading your bum cheeks apart when you're going down like that. Okay, try it, it works. All right. The last exercise of Benny's WOD is an RDL. Maybe go 45. Show the chicks. So So an RDL can be done in many different ways. Obviously, like Paige may have like implemented like a toe elevation or a heel elevation, or maybe added a roll or whatever, but we're just gonna show a general RDL of what it's supposed to look like. Very similar to how the lower back extension is gonna look. We wanna try and make sure that we're relaxing our glutes, okay? So getting our lower back to take the direct grunt, I guess, of the movement, where we're gonna be pushing our pelvis back and shortening those erectors as we travel through hip flexion. So as Benny's hinging down and getting his tits to the floor, we're able to control our lumbar and hold a stiff position as we go down. Again, your bum's doing this, all right? We don't care anyway. But I hope that makes sense. Like, at the end of the day, and I'll touch on glute training. The thing is that the glutes don't need to be trained any different. Muscles don't need to be trained any different. Like, I think, like most of you girls probably heard about calf training. Like, you got to train them a bit differently to maybe, like, I don't know, your shoulders. But the thing is that muscles are stupid. You've just got to train them the exact same as anything. So when we're trying to grow our glutes and we're squeezing them all the time, we've actually got to go the other way sometimes and lengthen them out. Like, we've got to go through a full range of motion. So by coming in and doing some eccentrically loaded, so lengthening exercises for your glutes can actually give you more glute gains, okay? But also it's gonna directly train your lower back to make you stiffer so you can lift a heap more weight, okay? The second point is to not neglect your upper body, okay? So it obviously helps improve your balance, okay, your posture, and it gives you more training days in the week to come to the gym, okay? So if you're just coming on your lower body days, try and create some upper body days where you can come and actually do some more volume, get some more work in, and help develop those other capacities like your balance and your posture. And also it allows your lower body to recover. So even though you're smashing yourself with all these lower body exercises, coming in and doing some upper body can actually give you some time to recover. The last point I will make is getting the pelvis to move in all ranges of motion through isometric and isotonic based exercises. Okay, so in layman's terms, that means just exercises where I think Paige has added like rollers between your thighs and you thought, what the hell am I doing with this? Yep. And isotonic meaning just moving through a normal, normal exercise. But basically, the next slide I'll show, yeah, okay, so I'm not gonna go through all this stuff, but the main thing is that we understand that the pelvis isn't a stable structure, it moves. So we can see here, this is called your pubis, okay? And basically it's just these ligaments that attach the two sides of the pelvis together. And then what I want you to understand is that these two sides of your pelvis, so here and here, they can move back and forward on their own. Okay, so when we walk, my right side of my pelvis is gonna go forward and then my left is gonna be left behind. So it's like this. And then I go to take my next step and it's gonna do that. Okay, so we're moving like this, okay? And it's very small movements. But the thing is that some people can't move their right side as far as their left, and that's where you can favor maybe one side of your body when you squat. One knee might come in a little bit more than the other. So a lot of, I guess, the pelvic-based exercises that we program are going to be revolved around not necessarily squaring you up, but just making you feel a little bit more balanced, okay? Avoiding overuse of some tissues than the other because some bones may move more than the other. That's as simple as that. Again, the training for that process starts now, and it's really important that you attend to those tissues because they're going to probably cop a flogging. Am I right, Annie? But anyway, so at the end of the day, here at the gym and with Paige, obviously, like we are attending these things, and we do care a lot about obviously like your pelvic structure, and it's important that we do these exercises and you don't skip on squeezing a roller or you don't skip on your hip hinging movements. It's important that you're obviously listening to us to obviously get the most out of your pelvic training, okay? That's it. Cool.